All right, let's go ahead and get started. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Brianna Mihalovich, and I am the Professional Development Coordinator here at Campus Compact. We are so excited about our partnership with the Academy of Community Engagement Scholarship as co-creators of this series. ACES is an organization that recognizes exceptional leaders who live at the intersection of academics and communities to benefit society. And together we bring you this series on addressing wicked issues through community engaged scholarship. This year, our series is focusing on our climate and our health, where we explore the impacts of climate change on health and how higher education can make a difference. Leading the charge in this conversation is Campus Compact's Design Fellow, Rebecca Forsythe. Before I hand things off to her, I do want to highlight some of the ways that you can get involved with Campus Compact. So if you're interested in learning more about Campus Compact's professional development offerings, I have a link that I will drop in the chat where you can learn more and explore our upcoming programs and events. We have quite a few things coming up in this summer and fall that I encourage you all to check out. And if you have any questions, you can email our team at our professional development email, which I will also drop in the chat. And while I do that, I will go ahead and pass things off to Rebecca.
Hi, folks. Hello again. I'm this year's Wicked Issues Fellow, Rebecca Forsythe, and I've been moderating the panel sessions and also introducing kind of the presenters and whatnot. So today we're going to be finishing out our session with the Professor Rose Pasquarello Beauchamp, who will be providing us with a presentation on the relationship with her work and climate hope. After our time here today, we're going to ask webinar attendees to share any resources or materials that you may have that personally help you in your work in addressing climate change and health and also climate hope. So be on the lookout for a form that will be sent to all attendees. I believe Brianna is going to also leave that in the chat. And then after our five-week series with this session, ending with this session today, we're going to compile those resources into a knowledge hub accessible on Campus Compact's website. And lastly, we will have time for Q&A after our presentation, and Brianna and I will be pulling some of your questions. So please, as Rose presents, think of anything you'd like to ask her, especially considering this is such a unique kind of area of engagement that I think a lot of us are kind of new to. And so I'd like to introduce our presenter for today. So we have Rose Pasquarello Beauchamp. She is a dancer, educator, and activist, and is a professor of dance at the University of Rochester and an artistic director of Electric Grit Dance. A certified movement analyst, her work is deeply rooted in somatics and body awareness. Her artistic research centers on collaboration across disciplines, somatics and social justice, dance as a change agent, and the embodiment of activism. For over 20 years, her choreographic work integrating dance, theater, design, and media has been featured internationally through Electric Grit Dance, Influx Dance, and Sirens Proof Films. She has been selected for multiple residencies and projects, including the NYS Dance Force, Western New York Choreographers Initiative, and the Jacob's Pillow Choreographers Lab. Her work has toured to festivals such as the University of Rochester International Fringe Festival, Richmond Contemporary Dance Festival, Southern Vermont Dance Festival, and Detroit's Assemble Festival, among others. Rose co-founded Artists Coalition for Change Together, active from 2016 to 2020, as a way to engage dancer citizens in Rochester and beyond. She's received multiple grants. Oh my goodness, you have such a you've done
Yeah,
so
you
much.
don't have to read the whole thing. It's fine. It's
okay.
good. Really.
Well,
don't, please. It's hard to listen. Thank you.
Regardless, she has done a tremendous amount of community engaged work regarding dance and somatics that I'm so excited to hear about today. In particular, she's been moving into the area of ecosomatics with EcoLab and working on dance in relationship to environmental justice. And so with this introduction, amazing introduction, I'm going to hand it over to Rose.
Yay, thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here. So today, my first task was to introduce myself. You did that very well. I am a dance scholar at the University of Rochester, and I just want to let everyone know that the University of Rochester sits on the unceded territory of the Seneca Nation. keepers of the western door of the Haudenosaunee Confederacy. So a lot of my work has to do with somatics and ground and land. And so I just like for us to remember that and just to call it out as we begin. So before I start, I want to just define how I'm using a couple of terms. Simply when I'm talking about art, I think when I say art, a lot of people think visual art. I'm talking about all of it. Visual art, movement, theater, performance art, writing, anything, crocheting, like anything that is art. And I'll be talking a little bit about ecosomatics. If anyone has questions about that later, you can let me know. Hopefully I'll define it well. And then, I'm talking about hope today, and I've been thinking about how to define hope. And I think what I want to say is that hope to me isn't blind positivity, isn't wishful thinking. It's finding hope takes grit, especially at times like this. And so I just wanted to start with that. So without further ado, let's see. Okay. So across time, art and movement have been tools that humans use to process and reflect on their lives. It has provided personal and collective catharsis across millennia. At the best of times, art reflects the human, and at the worst of the times, it does the same. Along with language, beliefs, customs, art is a significant element of culture. Art is a reflection of culture. It reacts to the issues of the time. It highlights the positives and negatives of culture that it exists within. With the fall of monarchies, around the world, art of the 20th century became culture building. It was defying and dissenting and imagining new possibilities. Artists are trained to reimagine and to create. In art school, part of learning about composition is learning to see all possibilities, as evidenced here of me on the bike rack, to unpack and deconstruct that which isn't working. All of this is to situate art in the larger frame of this wicked issue that we're talking about, climate change. So I identify as an artist, a civic artist that engages community through process and practice. I make art as a necessity, part of a personal effort to process the dystopian realities of climate change, and in an attempt to use my talents to imagine possible futures or world building. I often share this idea with my students. Our climate reality encompasses and impacts all of us, and it requires all of us to make change. And yes, we need scientists to analyze and model predictions, but we also need builders willing to find ways towards sustainability, therapists to work with people that have climate anxiety, teachers to educate our children, and yes, artists to think outside the box and create new worlds and futures. So today, I'm here to talk about hope in the face of climate disaster. And over the past 6 years, I've been diving into this idea in my creative practice. And I just want to share a few projects that I've been working on in an attempt to give you an offering. Perhaps something here will inspire you and give you hope. With an emphasis on reconnecting our bodies to the environment, or ecosomatics. The trajectory of my work has taken me through a process that is community building, hopeful, and world building. So the first project I want to talk about is remnants. For me, the first step towards collective healing and hopefulness, and in turn, healthy well-being, the first step is to understand where I am in a historical and spatial context. And that was the basis of remnants. So weaving dance, music, photography, visual art, and storytelling, Remnants unveils the human and ecological memories of various sites from the indigenous beginnings through current times. Remnants is designed as an immersive walking art installation involving multiple modalities. The audience is invited to join in through the natural spaces of the performance. Each performance is unique, depending on the site, the performers, the stories, and the audience that attends. The universal theme is the experience of space, story, and multiple modalities of art in an active and immersive adventure with the goal of uncovering histories and activating space. So here's some other photos of Remnants. Remnants began as a product of the pandemic when everyone was like, you have to go outside and dance. I was like, right? But I'm so thankful for that now. It began as a product of the pandemic and it ended as a cathartic piece of collective grief for our community here in Rochester, and the first step in healing. Co-created with my friend and lovely human Trish Corcoran. She's a Haudenosaunee storyteller. And Stella Wong is a poet, and Andrea Gluckman, a photographer. Remnants is an outdoor dance theater work that interrogated the history of the land and earth we were on, while at the same time offering hope and other ways of being. And so there's a direct correlation between the histories of what happened to the Indigenous community here and our realities of climate change now. And so what we've tried to do is really bridge that through movement, dance, and all of these things. So let's see. So these are just some photos of the actual performance. The work alternated between honest stories of colonization led by Trish's familial experiences and the hopeful poetics of reframing our perspectives in relation to the environment. In one poem, Stella wrote, "What if we lean to our motionless movement? Or are you invasive or endangered relative to other plants or animals?" The audience was offered prompts for experiencing the work at the start. We reminded them that they were part of the experience and that their bodies mattered and that they were in relationship to the environment as they progressed through the project. So you can see some of the crazy things that we did, but it was really lovely to have no separation between audience, community, storytellers, performers. So this is a video that has no sound, unfortunately, because we couldn't figure it out. But I am going to play it, and I'll just talk over it. If sound miraculously happens, let me know. You can't hear sound, can you? You can't.
It comes through a little bit.
A little bit. So this is an excerpt. Part of the reality is making this accessible for everyone. And so this little piece of it was very hard to get the audience to come on down and experience in their bodies. So this was a dance film related to what we did. Through the rest of the project, we were able to kind of bring them along with us and ask them to engage in their own understanding of the environment. Since we don't have sound, I'm going to skip ahead a little bit. I'm allowed to. Here it is. There you go. You can just get a sense of the work we're doing. And so each dancer contributed. We would unpack the land in our bodies through a somatic lens. We would spend time in the dirt and the water. And understand what that felt like in our bodies to kind of reconnect. And that's the ecosomatics part of what we were doing. And then, of course, we turned it into a piece of art to ask people to look at their parks differently. I'm sorry that you weren't able to see the whole thing, but let's see. Sorry, I'm just having trouble getting through it. Give me a second. There we go. Nope. There we go. So that was Remnants. And that was the beginnings of my kind of unpacking what ecosomatics can bring to the community. The community really responded to this probably because it was COVID. And because there was this craving of coming together and listening and telling stories and moving and sharing in the experience. So the next project projects I'd like to talk about, the projects are the Adirondack Climate Project and Watershed Movements. They are both multifaceted projects connecting climate change to storytelling, community building, art, and education. This framework operates across both projects here, taking shape in different ways depending on the context and community. So, conceived in collaboration with digital artist scholar Stephanie Aschenfelder, she works here at the University of Rochester, and civic artist Andrea Gluckman, both projects are creative endeavors in eco-social engagement. Born from the belief that art plays a central role in making climate resilient communities, and from our desire to provide avenues for greater depth of learning and transformational potential. We intentionally construct an arts-centered framework for an approach to public engagement on climate change. This framework is built around 4 components: story collection, creative response, public engagement, and embodiment, all weaving together concurrently. And I should say before I explain the projects that these projects were conceived of by us, but in collaboration with our community partners, the Adirondack Council. So we went to them and asked them, we were like, hey, we're artists, we're interested in doing this work. What do you need? And they said, we need to get a pulse on what's going on in the community. And so they asked us to collect stories about climate change. So for the Adirondack Climate Project, we travel through the park in an audio recording booth that we built, modeled after ice shanties found in the Adirondacks. With this, we take in an embodied approach to collecting stories, asking the community to step inside and to share what they notice about the changing environment. So it would be quite easy for us to have a QR code and ask someone to scan it and give us a climate story. But what we're actually trying to do is provide them with an embodied experience. They're in the Adirondack Park already, so they have that connection to the environment. Then we're asking them to come into this space to share what they're willing to share with us. Sorry. Okay. So modeled on this approach, the Watershed Movements is a community-based research initiative gathering personal stories from people living along the Genesee and the Raquette Rivers, 2 New York State watersheds facing shared challenges. This was supported by the Institute for Human Health and Environment, and our guiding question for the research was, can storytelling and art help people better understand the link between water health and human health or well-being across diverse watershed communities? At the heart of this project is a floating story booth that we built that docks along both rivers, inviting people to share how the river impacts their lives and health. At our story collection events, we offer multiple experiences to engage with them about their rivers. And some of them were, we had some students and some visitors. And so it wasn't just the Genesee and the Raquette, right? If someone was from Tennessee and felt connected to water there, it was also about that. So as an academic, I know that art and storytelling remind us that resilience is not only a scientific or policy-based goal, but also a human one, built through connection and understanding. These modalities can serve as a bridge between the cold, hard facts of climate change and the emotions we need to feel in order to take action. The stories are about felt experiences, literally felt, like in our bodies, right? The understanding of temperature, how rain feels. So that felt is kind of what I mean. They make the invisibility of climate change seen, felt, and imagined. They create space for us to grieve, to process loss, and most importantly, embrace hope. Now, as a human and a place-based listener and community engaged practitioner, I know that these stories foster connection in the community, reflection, and transformation. So after we collect all of these stories, there is a creative response, and each project is slightly different. For the Adirondack Climate Project, we bring the stories to artists with permission, of course, and ask them to respond. So not to replicate, not to tell someone else's story, but to respond to what they hear. We work with a wide range of artists, students, professional artists, hobbyists, and we host an annual artist retreat in the Adirondacks to get people up there. This retreat serves as a communal gathering place for a diverse group each year. And artists come together into the park and listen to the stories as they are also experiencing the environment with their own bodies. We facilitate listening sessions, dinner discussions, embodied experiences, and collaborations while allowing artists to engage in an art sprint with a few goals. So it's like 4 days long, and their only goal for those 4 days is to listen to the stories, reflect, embody, and create. So I have a few slides of some of the art. This is one of the physical experiences in the artist retreat. This is another guided kind of meditation sound walk that we do. This is one of the artists, Joan Epstein, creating some of her visual art. And this accordion, this is one of our really successful pieces of art. This accordion style book titled The Life Cycle of a Tick was created by Rachel Devona, a farmer and artist living in Iona, New York. Here, Rachel uses the Adirondack Park as a backdrop to explore the tick's life cycle. Over the past 13 years, Lyme's disease has risen in the Adirondacks, and through her art, Rachel visually educates her audience, drawing attention to this issue. So you can't tell here, but these little ticks on the screen are embroidered with thread and they're actual size. So the book is like this big, it's tiny. And she took this from listening to all the stories. This we can't listen to because we don't have sound, but you can see the lyrics. This is Dan Lynch. He's a songwriter, performer, and audio engineer in Rochester. He's also an ethnomusicologist. So he created this song called The Ballad of an Adirondacks, and it's a song about the devastation caused by Hurricane Irene in the Adirondack Park. Through his music, Dan captures not only the physical impact of the storm, but also the emotional toll it took on the community. Unfortunately, the next one is a movement piece, and I don't think we're going to be able to do it without sound because it shares one of the stories. But I can let you watch it a little bit. So this is a tongue-in-cheek piece created by Missy Full-Smith.
Seasons are changing.
And she takes an audio story with permission and underlines it. Underlays
Rose,
it.
we can actually hear it.
Oh, you can. Oh my gosh.
Yes.
Can I just restart and be quiet?
I would love that.
Okay. Here we go.
So the seasons are changing. And you'll hear from some friends of mine who live up here year round. They used to do ice boat racing on the lake, and the lake would completely freeze. Bill's mother, back in the early 1920s and 30s, had stories of people, the lake would completely freeze, and if they wanted to move cottages across the lake, they would bring them across on the ice. That was the easiest way to relocate cottages. That now the lake freezes. It froze last winter, but very late and very briefly. I don't even know if it froze solid enough that you could dare to move a cottage across on it. It gets warmer earlier. So the seasons now are accelerating. So spring comes earlier. The water warms up sooner. The spring flowers are gone earlier. It's hard to say in terms of the foliage that last year we had a terrible moth invasion, and the mountain across the road was completely defoliated.
So that video that we just watched was created by Misty Full-Smith, and she's a professor of dance here at the University of Rochester. And we expected her to come to this artist retreat, listen to the stories, and do a dance piece, but no, she found objects in the cabin and kind of used humor to allow us to kind of process some of this stuff. And so the art that we get is really all over the place, but it's really heartfelt and really does inspire. So in watershed movements, the creative response happens with participants directly through embodied practice. So this was not commissioned, but supported by the Institute for Human Health and Environment. And we were actually trying to measure the outcomes of embodied storytelling to see if there was a shift in how participants connected with their watersheds. So the embodied experience was a little more centered. And the experiences explore other dimensions of ecological knowledge and place-based connection. Again, that's the ecosomatics part of this. Through somatic engagement with landscape, participants explore alternative ways of knowing that complement scientific data. So what does this look like? What do these experiences look like? They include breath work, subtle awareness exercises, and prompts that connect the physical body with their surroundings through touch, smell, sounds, etc. This embodied practice grounds the abstract environmental concepts in lived experience, allowing for more nuanced understandings of how human and ecological systems are intertwined. During the project, participants are led through a movement choir. It's a process in which they share ideas and explore their connection to water. During the movement choir, the movement choir itself has a lineage to German modern dance, and these movement choirs are known for holding individual ideas and concepts or beliefs while in community practice and in the environment. So it comes to fruition and looks a bit like a community dance piece, but the ideas behind the movement are really what's important. And the movement choir, every time I go into it with non-dancers in a community, I'm always like, oh, this is going to fail. This is really hard. And then there's something that happens when people start talking and moving together that shifts like the energy, right? And understanding. It's a deeper understanding. So I think we have a little bit of time. I would actually love to just, assuming that those of you are out there and game to kind of have a moment of mindfulness, I would love to just talk you through one of the brief mindfulness exercises I do in this experience. So wherever you are, take a moment to decide if you're game for this. And if you are, you can sit in your chair. You can plant your feet on the ground, or perhaps you're standing, or maybe you're laying on the floor, whatever works. But I want you to take a moment to focus on your breath. And so that'll take a couple of breaths to kind of cleanse the palate. And just begin to notice how you're breathing without changing it. And then perhaps you notice your heartbeat as a polyrhythm, juxtaposing the rhythm of your breath. Maybe you can feel your shoulders relax or your neck release. Maybe you can feel the groundedness of the earth underneath your feet. Perhaps you can imagine growing roots down into the earth like the trees do. And that information from your feet and from the earth kind of comes up into your body. And I want you to listen. Yes, you hear my voice and we're all in different places, but what can you hear? So I hear a bird outside my window. Perhaps you hear the buzzing of a light. Maybe you can hear the wind outside. And then I want you to bring your attention to your skin. Notice your skin is part of the environment. You are part of the environment. Can you sense that kind of symbiotic relationship, maybe in your breath? So as we inhale oxygen that has been given to us by other beings on the planet. And as we exhale, we offer them something back, right? We exhale that carbon dioxide. And so this is not just breathing to keep us alive or to calm us down, but this is a constant ongoing exchange with the environment that is very easy to forget about. Take a few more breaths. Ending on a nice deep one. We could do that for an hour. That was like 3 minutes. But that's an example of what I'll do to get participants started, right? Usually we're outside when we're doing this. Can we feel the grass? Can we know that we are in communication with the trees and the plants? And it sounds a little out there, but it's real, right? And so this reconnection to Earth is part of what our goal is, as we are also trying to measure these outcomes and create community. So with both of these projects, we also really try to engage the public. That is students, that is community partners, that anyone really. We're trying to get a broad reach, right? We're trying not to just stay within the academy. And our intention with this work is to engage as many human and community partners as we can in the process, listening, sharing, and experiencing. We host art installations, bring guest speakers into our classes, hold community events, and bring people into nature, which is, in my opinion, one of the most important parts of it, particularly students. We bring them up to the Adirondacks if it's with this project. So all of our stories are mapped and can be found on our website, ecolab.art. I have a slide at the end with the link. For Adirondack Climate Project, each story is connected to the piece of art that was reflecting the story. And so we have a map showing us where the story was collected, and then the piece of art with the artist statement and the bio of the artist. So it starts, it's an ongoing process. It's been about 4 years that we've been doing this, and we just keep adding. For watershed movements, the stories are archived and analyzed for trends and data because as I mentioned before, this was a research study through the medical center. So that also can be found on our website and can share some of the outcomes of the project. We are at heart educators and continue to center education as a creative practice. So our educational philosophy is simple: people take care of what they love, and to love something, whether it's a watershed or a river or a tree, people must know about it. This is just an example of some of the engagement stuff that we've been doing. We had the privilege of hosting a panel discussion about stewarding water, air, and wildlands in the Adirondack Park and beyond. And this is just a still from our work at the Wild Center at Tupper Lake, in Tupper Lake, New York. It's a natural history museum that really supports the environment. So the final project I'd love to share with you is the Hallowed Crown. And this project really is about world making as critical and creative practice. The Hallowed Crown is an interdisciplinary dance project, again, exploring identity, power, and transformation, centering on the crone archetype as a disruptive force who dismantles oppressive systems to create space for new ways of being. Blending myth, ritual, and physical storytelling, the piece envisions a world where bodies are liberated from commodification and community thrives. By exploring the crone as a liminal and collective presence, the piece highlights themes of reclamation, resilience, and communal wisdom. The hallowed crown evolved as a thought experiment. What happens when we envision a future of our own making? Who is in charge, and what systems change or fall away completely? Gritty and Dirty, the show is about a return to ourselves and the environment, a return to human connection, and a return to nature. It's an embodied archive, a documentation of these concepts in our bodies. And when I say our, I mean there were 17 of us involved in creating this, while also a reclamation of dance as a ritual of human connection. We invited the audience to sit in discomfort, to question their own values and preconceptions. We asked them to consider how they might evaluate right and wrong, moral or immoral, whether these values they truly held in their bodies or whether they were imposed within a larger framework. Finally, we asked audiences what they would dismantle in modern society and rebuild from the ground up. The process of this piece is the community engagement part. The collective movement making, research, movement composition, design, and writing, it was a labor of love, and all of that was about world building, personal processing, and creating possibilities of a collective future, a model of how to achieve this future outside of a performance space. So all of these, looking back at all of these pieces and looking back at the emergence of them and the sequence of these projects, I see the sense in their trajectory now. I didn't as I was moving through it. I see the sense in the trajectory and the relationship to the world we live in as it relates to climate change. The making of these pieces allowed me and my collaborators to grapple with our collective sorrows, fears, and hopes. And it did this in community. Creating the pieces involved communities of storytellers, dancers, musicians, weavers, all of these events, the collection sites, the performances, the art installations, the artist retreats, all of these sites became places that hold hope. An audience and participants begin to reflect, process their own climate grief, and consider what is possible. The response to all of this has been overwhelmingly positive. And it's spread like wildfire here in Rochester. And it's not because we're doing anything extraordinary, but because we are doing timely work that makes people consider, that fosters connection and hope, because the realities right now are a little less promising. So looking across these projects, the through lines that feel important to me, that I find in each, are processing collective grief and healing, ecosomatic reciprocity and care for the environment, and communal process and movement as a way of meaning making and understanding. So this leads me to the essence of what I believe cultivates hope in the face of climate change, and that is you and me and our embodied selves. Not all of us are artists, but all of us have bodies. Our bodies are of the earth. They are sites of resistance, archives of experience, and places of hope. So thank you. These, I must, include all of my collaborators. If anybody's interested, please reach out to them. I tried to put all their Instagram handles there. You can screenshot it. And then I also have mine on the next slide. Thank you.
Gorgeous. Thank you so much, Rose. And also thank you for that moment of somatics in the workday, especially. I'm like, thank you, letting me breathe.
I wish I could do some movement, but it's hard when I can't see people. So I chose that.
That is difficult. We do actually have a question. So one of the attendees, Scott, has a question, which I am going to share with you because it's quite long. But
Sure.
I am also going to read it here. So he is wondering, he says, it would be great to hear your thoughts on hope, psychological resilience, and well-being in relation to increasingly bringing non-academic community leads, art, and diverse knowledge forms into journal publication pathways. This is an example of a paper we put out last summer in which artists were co-authors and developed figures to offer visual storytelling alongside our text narrative. And I'm going to share the link to that as well with everyone else if folks would like to see what we are talking.
I'm going to stop my share. Is that cool? So I can read the chat.
Absolutely.
Great. Great. Hope I just need to read it. That's a long one, so I need to read it for a second.
I agree.
In my somatic understanding. Yeah. It's interesting. I live outside the world of journal publications, partly because of this. Not that I don't publish articles, but I actually wonder if there are other, and I don't know that I'm answering the question, but I wonder if there are other ways of knowing that can become respected in the academy. So that is hard as a mover and dancer. That is the fight I always fight. But I do think digital technologies, and mapping and visual online, work does lend itself towards that in a way that was not true 20 years ago, right? I think that there are platforms that are able to engage work that encompasses the visual information and perhaps even, the auditory or a kind of, I'm almost thinking like zines. I know that's not academic in any way, but there's some way of this digital work, or these digital tools that are bringing us to a different place. Now, I think the goal is always, as a community engaged practitioner, I think the goal is always to center the community partner, right? To take it off the pedestal of the community, of the academy. And I do think somatics does this in an interesting way, right? So we all have bodies, they all look different, they all have different abilities, but there's something about respecting the body on a human level that can center people that need to be centered. Again, that is not answering the question. I'm super psyched to get to look at this article. So I really appreciate the comment.
And I remind folks, if you have questions, please send them in. I also think, talking about data visualization here. Oh, wait, Scott just responded. Awesome. I do think data visualization is really interesting. And I don't know if folks have heard about the Dancer PhD contest, but that is always kind of a fun thing. And so I'm just sharing that information here as a PhD student. And I love seeing how people kind of visualize or do dance for data visualization. So questions that I have, Rose, for you in particular. And so if we're thinking about kind of our attendees and what they're kind of doing in their day-to-day regarding climate change and health, how might we start to incorporate some of the work that you've done or work into our work as it relates to kind of research and teaching and civic engagement? And, is it our place to kind of incorporate these things, and how do we kind of go about that?
Yeah, so because I had only a certain amount of time, I cut out a ton of the work that we did with watershed movements. And I'm just going to put again in the chat here, ecolab.art.
Awesome.
You can click on the watershed movements when you all want to check it out. Because this was a real research project through the University of Rochester Medical Center, right? I'm a community fellow or a community engaged scholar with the Institute for Human Health and Environment. And it's hard. It's interesting how hard it is to go like this, right? Dance, we are collaborators. And then when I go to the medical center, they're like, that's not health. That's not science, right? Like, so there's that. There's just an uphill battle trying to go like this. But I'll argue that science is creative and so is art, right? There are lots of people doing this work across the country, right? There is information in somatics and ecosomatics and movement practices that us dancers have known forever. And I think now, within the past 20 years, with technology actually becoming a little bit more mobile, right? So I'm thinking about like being able to take blood pressure or do some of these other things that historically have been harder to do in a mobile setting, has allowed for this interdisciplinary research between art, movement, and health sciences, medical centers, etc. I think it's just about being open, right? Like, honestly, when I think about watershed movements, what I love about it is not the research, but the research is what helps bring the field forward in some ways. And when I say the research, it's like the outcomes, the data analysis, the the mapping, like all of that stuff that I actually don't do. I have partners that do that. But that part becomes really significant, right? And so I think getting more artists to do that in relationship to health and environment is one thing. I think on the health side of it, I guess the health side of it, one of the things I've been having trouble with is health is defined actually quite specifically. So we actually used well-being instead of health because they were like, no, it's not health outcomes. And I was like, but psychological health and embodiment and somatics, this is all health. And like, as people, they know that. But for funding or for certain things, like there are these very specific definitions. I'm totally ranting, but I see the threads of possibility of bringing all of these things together. And it will only happen if artists are doing this work and people in medical centers and people on environmental research, etc. Sorry, that was very long-winded, but
No, no. And then I'm curious, when you're working with students in particular, how do you kind of bring this work into the classroom itself? Like how receptive are students to this as
yeah.
well?
Yeah, so I also didn't talk about this. We teach Stephanie Aschenfelder and I teach a course called Climate Interventions. And it's basically, she's a digital media artist and I'm a somatic dance artist. And we have this random course that's like looking at, we do ecosomatics, we do mindfulness practices, we make art, we listen to the stories, we go to the Adirondacks, we collect the stories, we look at design thinking. So we have all of these threads. And I think at first the students are like, what is this class? And we just had the last class today, and hearing them understand in their bodies what this collaboration means, right? It's not just up to the scientist or just up to the artist. It's like really understanding the environment in our bodies while taking the science and the art and all of these methodologies. It's pretty awesome. So they make me happy and make me want to keep doing this work forever. Some of their art is also up on our website. Some of them, collect stories, listen to them, and have these amazing pieces of art that come out of it. I also one other thing I want to say is I teach that class in particular, but all of my classes are centered around understanding the body and the environment. So if I'm teaching modern dance or ballet, I'm also talking about that, right? It's because we have to. It is the reality. So
That's amazing. And as a former kind of dancer in the way of, coming up as a little ballerina when I was growing up, I just imagine kind of incorporating kind of thinking about ecology into dance is incredibly somatic, and especially with like ballet and the structuration of it, like how it's so kind of rigid, being able to kind of add a little flexibility to that feel would probably feel amazing.
amazing. I just want to say I just put Body and Earth by Andrea Olson. Oh, spelled wrong. Olson. Um, you would love that book. Anyone here that likes
Amazing.
somatic practices, it takes you into an environment and gives you tasks like talk to the insects, listen to the river. It's pretty awesome. So
I love that. So I am curious, regarding kind of thinking about ecosomatics, and I know we're talking kind of broadly here about impacts that we can make for our community and things like that. What are some practices we can bring into our daily lives, especially, for a lot of folks who are dealing with some really jarring data, and stuff that kind of feels really heavy in the day to day?
Yeah, I mean, I just want to, so the thing about, and I don't know, I've said this like 3 times today because I taught class and I've been processing things, but so stop me if I've repeated myself, but you know, that relationship to colonization and our disconnection with the earth is related to climate change. And so there is something about the healing process of that, regardless of our backgrounds, and that'll be different for everyone, right? If you're an Indigenous person, that's real different. If you're an immigrant, that's real different. If you've been, I don't, right, many different things. But if that healing process can take place, then we start to understand the environment in a different way. We connect to it. We understand that it's going to rain because we can see the clouds. We hear spring, right? Or we see the river changing. And so they sound super, super simple, but it's actually really critical to start to Robin Wall Kimmerer has this term where she says, become indigenous, right? And so really what she's talking about is like, how do you get the knowledge of your environment to that level? And so I think that is healing and gives us hope as we are dealing with all these really heavy issues, right? And so it might mean really taking a walk. Forest bathing is ecosomatics. Having a moment of mindfulness is somatics. Making a choice for the environment that might take a little more effort, right? Maybe I'm going to go to the farm stand instead of the grocery store, but I'm going to walk there because then I get to be in my body. Like anything we can do to be in all our free time less convenient and more connected are the little things that will help us be hopeful, but also resilient. Like this stuff, all of this, especially right now, oh my gosh, everything is in our body. All of the stress of what's going on in the world with the climate and the wars and all this, it's living in our body and we don't even know it. It's like our body is like starting to protect us, right? And so our goal is to undo it. Honestly, the 5 minutes that we did while we were sitting here, I was more calm and could probably finish my presentation easier. Those 5 minutes, don't discount them. But I really think it's also about getting off screens. And I sound old when I say that, but like really putting them down. That was the biggest takeaway from our students today. They have a tech-free day they have to do, and they're like panicked about it. But they come out of it and they're like, oh, I felt the rain differently, right? And so that's it sounds simple, but it helps both in a resilience capacity and also a world building capacity, right? If we can do these little things every day.
I love that. And I immediately was like, how can I incorporate that into my kind of class sessions?
Yeah.
We'll see if I'm able to.
Yeah.
So another question, I'm in Colorado, you're in kind of the Adirondacks, kind of in upstate. And so for what if we're thinking about folks that are living more so amongst the built environment, um,
Ah.
how do folks navigate that?
Yeah, I encounter that a lot. We have a lot of students. Well, Rochester is not the Adirondacks, right? And I'm in the city, right? So I'm trying to bring
Okay.
students there. But we have a lot of students from New York City, right? And I think part of it is education in the sense like I remember talking to a student, she was like, I've never seen a bean plant grow. And I'm like, right, right? And so education, I mean, caring for plants. I mean, it sounds silly, sitting in the sun. So it doesn't have to be in the woods, right? But I love my favorite thing when I lived in the Bay Area was to go for a walk along the bay, right? That's still nature. I have one student who argues with me and says, our environment is our environment, whether it's built environment or natural environment. We still need to connect with it. So maybe it's just that.
Yeah, and I just imagine the kind of creative works that could come out of trying to feel the built environment and maybe the comparisons that one could make around that. Like, um, yeah, and
Yeah,
just how place really plays into it.
we had one piece of art. It was a student. So they took a map of the Grand Canyon actually, and they did kind of a faux theater project where they were business people selling the great garbage dump. And they were like promoting that, like, here's all this open space. Let's just put all our garbage in it. Right. And like that really was a project that was contrasting this like man-made urban, thing to like our natural resources in our environment. And so I think, we hear these in the stories for sure. But we all live in different places and have to contribute and have to survive, right? So,
So we do have a few more minutes left. So if anyone has any more questions, please let us know. Is there anything else you'd like to share with us, Rose, as we're kind of wrapping up?
no, I just appreciate, I think people underestimate the power of bodies, right? So a lot of my research is in like um, activism or resistance or whatever, and that is also somatics, right? And so like if we remember that our bodies are connected to each other, to the other beings, then there's like collective power that comes out of that. I think a lot of times, because we are all individual, we do different things with our bodies. Some of us dance and are very in tune with it, some of us don't, right? Some of us prefer not to move that much. I have a roommate from college like that, right? But she still has a body, right? And she still has a body that's powerful. And if we can really ride on that connected collective energy, then we can do hard things, right? The thing I love to think about with climate change is like, we got ourselves in it, we can get ourselves out of it, maybe, right? But that uses all of our bodies, all of us, in all of our disciplines, in all of our, with all of our talents and all of our hopes, right?
Yes, no, definitely. And as a sociologist, like we're always, in my discipline, we're always kind of grappling with these social structures and talking about how, they're kind of ever being and almost like godlike at a certain point. And we have to kind of ground ourselves and remind ourselves that these are human-made things and that we can do hard things. We can kind of undo these structures that create kind of harm and things like that.
Yeah.
And I also just found out right before this that our discipline is now adding in a section on creative sociology, so incorporating art and movement and things like that. And so
Wow,
I'm like, yeah, literally right before this.
yeah, not to underestimate world building, right? I know we're short on time, but like the last project I was talking about with Hallowed Crown, there is a practice of world building in creating art, right? And so one of the things we do, my local civic artist friends and I do, are, we try not to stay siloed, right? If I'm a civic artist, I'm going to go to the zoning planning committee, whatever. I'm going to work with the DPW. I'm going to work to use my skills to imagine what the possibilities are, right? Like, as I mentioned, we are trained to like think outside the box, to agitate a little bit, to question, right? And then a lot of other people are too. But, if we can start to integrate all of our expertise, artists, sociologists, therapists, climate scientists, that's how we're going to make the difference.
Love it. Love it. So we are wrapping up. So I do want to thank folks for attending at this awesome ending session and remind folks to send us any and all resources through that form that Brianna had sent earlier. And going forward, so we're going to be compiling all of these resources, including the ones that have been shared in sessions, into kind of a repository or knowledge hub for folks to reference as they engage with kind of their work around research or community engaged teaching, student civic engagement, or personal civic engagement, as well as hope. And so we'll share these resources on the website and likely be sharing them through emails as well. And then if you've missed any of the previous sessions, we're also going to have the recordings of sessions be available on YouTube as we kind of get those edited by our teams. But I just want to thank Rose again for this lovely presentation in spite of all the kind of tech issues. And I'm glad we were able to see that one video. And I hope that folks have a kind of hopeful and restful afternoon and evening kind of after this session as well. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. All right. So we can wrap things up. And thank you folks for attending.
Okay. Thank you, everyone.